Oh, do that, please. Thanks everyone for being here. Greatly appreciate it. My name's Scott Yaffe. If you didn't see the first slide, you'll have to start at the second slide because I don't know how to go back. So I apologize for that. So I did want to get started with, was there anything you needed to say or? Okay. We're here to talk about mindset, how it, can affect your business and all that kind of thing. We'll start with, I wanted to start with, so I'll start with this. When we talk about mindset, one of my favorite things that pops into my head is we did years ago when I was early on in sales, we were doing a prospecting night with our team and we were handing out properties to make calls on. And I was given a property by my team leader because it had just taken a price change. What made it a little bit different was that it had gone up $10,000, which is, and I said to my team leader, what do I say to somebody that's called on this and I'm letting them know that it's now $10,000 more expensive? He said, let them know they better do something quick before it goes up to 20. And so it really comes down to how you frame everything. So that was, I love that. That's my funny anecdote about mindset. We'll go ahead and switch to let you know what we're going to talk about today. Well, we're not going to do a market update because our lender's missing. So on our agenda, we're going to talking about changing your own mind, focusing on your clients, helping work on their mindset, and then also working with other agents. And then, of course, we'll open it up to a Q&A. So let's jump right in to changing your mind. So when I first got started, I've had my license since 2008, but I started in property management and leasing, and it was so very different. When I moved to sales 6 years ago, within the first week of doing it, I realized how little I really knew about real estate. It was so different from what I had been doing the previous 9 years. So I had a lot to learn, and it definitely came with some highs and some lows. So one of the first things I'll say, I had a lot of, one of the things I didn't do a good job of was focusing on my own goals. I wasn't sure what to do. I wasn't sure what my goals should be. I didn't know what I needed. And I just kind of put myself out there to help out the team as much as possible, things like that. Now, it's great to help out other people, all that kind of stuff. It's fantastic. But if you don't know what you're doing or what you want, it's a real easy way to get yourself buried, over-involved, spread yourself too thin, and also just not doing the things that work for you. So as a member of a team, I never want to be selfish, but in some ways you have to be. You've got to be a little bit selfish so you can narrow down what you need. Because if you're not focused on what you need and you're focused on what other people need, you're not helping yourself. You're not going to help yourself. You're not going to help your clients. You're going to be running around like a chicken with your head cut off. So once I really started giving some consideration to what my goals were, that made a difference for me because then I could focus on that. Another one of the big things for me was staying positive. It's too easy, especially in the market today, and especially as a new agent, when you're filling your pipeline and getting your feet wet and learning about the market and all that kind of stuff. It's easy to get down. It's easy to get dejected. You've got to catch yourself with that. And that's one of the reasons why focusing on your goals is a great way to, that's a great place to start, because it kind of gives you a place to look. It gives you a goal line, hence the name, word goal. So staying positive makes a big difference. I know for me, at least, it was one of those things where if I would get a mutual release, or if a client ghosted me, or if a client decided to work with somebody else, it would ruin me. It would ruin me for days. It'd be, I was, I could get a mutual release on a Friday and I'd want to stay in bed until Monday, just, and you can't let that happen, because one of the main, it's not good for you. It's not healthy, but also that one negative thing is likely not the only thing you've got going on. And so focusing on that and ignoring the positives is a great way to lose those other positives. And so that was one of my big things. It's just like, it's the same idea of, like I said, never put yourself in a position where one mutual release is going to destroy your year. That's going to, one client backing away from the market is going to disrupt everything. So you want to stay in the positive. If something happens, great, move along. And one of the things I'll say about that is, it's how you frame it. So, for example, on something like a mutual release, if you get a mutual release, I know that it would shut me down. But what you got to, the way, when I switched my mindset to, it's not about that one mutual release being gone. You should still have that client. Your client doesn't disappear because the deal does. So your job, you've got to pivot, and your job becomes maintaining that relationship. It's got to be, you got to make sure that what you're doing is, yes, this one didn't work out, but you want to make sure that you're the person writing the next one. And if you shut down and go negative, there's a good chance that person's going to find someone else. Hey, sorry, I think we need a different approach. You've got to change your approach. So it's more about maintaining that relationship, because in the grand scheme of things, what it should be, any mutual release should be more about not losing a deal, but moving a payday. I mean, that's really what it is. I mean, everyone, obviously, we're in this business because we want to close deals, we want to get paid. But it's one of those things, like, you're just moving that payday. You thought you were going to get paid next month, maybe it's the month after. It's just getting right back at it, keeping your people energized and keeping your people motivated. So, big one for me was always taking things personal. And that is when going back to, like I said, a mutual release, or if you've got a client that you're reaching out to and they're not responding to you, you cannot take it personally. People don't need you till they need you. And so do you answer the phone every time a cable provider calls you? Do you answer the phone every time, any solicitor calls you? No. And so you wait. But if you needed somebody, you would pick up the phone and say, yeah, I'm ready for your help. This is no different. So I always say you can't take it personally, because it's never about you. I always thought I spent too much time thinking, what is about me that people aren't responding to? What is about me that they don't want? Things like that. You cannot look at it that way. Sometimes, like I said, and I can't stress this enough, people don't need you till they need you. So don't take it personally. Be consistent. That is my biggest. I think, by the way, a lot of things are going to be my biggest things, but be consistent is definitely one of my biggest things. And that goes back to focusing on your goals. It's work the way you want to work, attain what you want to attain. And let that guide you. One of the biggest things for me, once I started doing this kind of stuff, being consistent, sticking with the way I wanted to work, working when I wanted to work, with the people I wanted to work with, it moved my goal line in a very positive way, which was, I did this. I made a very concentrated effort to work consistently, working the hours I wanted to work with the people I wanted to work, setting boundaries. We'll get to that. And it helped me. The one thing, my biggest takeaway from it was it showed me that I could do more, and I could do more in a positive way, and not just feel like I was running around like a chicken with my head cut off. The worst thing you can do is if you're, and this is easy to do when you're young, or new, I should say young, is I was going into every weekend feeling like I needed to sell 5 houses. I've got to sell 5 houses this weekend. How am I going to pay my bills if I don't? Things like that. And you're not going to do yourself or your clients any service by doing that, because it's just, they're going to know that you're rushing. They're going to know, and you're not going to take the time to focus on what they need. You've got to listen to them, because you're only listening to yourself, which is why, again, I go back to, if you focus on your goals early, you know where you're coming from. And so it's easier to focus on someone else's needs and listen to someone else if you're not questioning what you're doing. So like I said, that's where I ran into a problem is always, like I said, 5 I need to sell 5 houses this weekend, or I don't know what I'm going to do. I'm not going to be able to pay my bills. You've got to knock down what's in front of you, and you've got to be able to. I was losing clients over it. I was having to cancel one person to get to another person because I thought this person was more likely to buy right now than this person, all that kind of stuff. And so, what it came down to was I wasn't listening to anybody, including myself. So once I started focusing on that, focusing on what I needed, I could focus more on what my people needed. And then I could find my consistent balance. I could start knowing the way I wanted to work. Our team leader always says, and this is a great piece of advice I share with everybody, is if you answer your phone, if a client calls you at 10 o'clock and you answer, you're telling your client you will answer the phone every night at 10 o'clock. You're giving them permission to call you whenever they want to. So again, working consistently to me is about setting boundaries as well. This is what I'm working at this time. I'm not working at this time because I need some of this other time to get stuff done. If you're answering every phone call, if you're running around to every showing and not scheduling, then you're not going to do anybody any service, including yourself. And that's going to create some of those moments where you feel overwhelmed or buried. So that's a big, again, that all again falls into consistency. So making sure you're being consistent, which then will lead us into overcoming adversity. So, and that's the kind of stuff we're talking about. When you lose a client that you thought you shouldn't have, things like that. Of course, take a moment and think about what you could have done differently, but learn from it and make sure you do things differently. But also figure out what they could do differently for you. But a lot of that's on you as well. And again, setting boundaries. So staying in the positive by working the way you want to work, by setting your boundaries, all that kind of stuff makes a huge difference. It made a huge difference for me. I started, my business went up because of all that. And again, one of the things I know a lot of young agents deal with, we talk about setting up buyer consults, things like that. When someone doesn't show up for an appointment, a buyer consult or a showing, things like that, getting down, it's very easy to think, how can I keep doing this? This is frustrating. What I would say is anytime, any canceled meeting, any canceled showing, anytime someone doesn't show up, there's a lot of positives to take away from that. First, you're getting an answer. You want to know if someone's viable. They don't show up to your buyer consult. They're probably not viable that day. Maybe in a week, they're going to be more serious. Maybe in a month, they're going to be more serious. You are, worst case scenario, you are potentially filling your pipeline and you're cleaning off your plate to do something else. Now you've got time to do something else. Someone doesn't show up at a showing. Worst case scenario, you've just increased your market knowledge because you're their preview. Well, worst case scenario, someone could show up and murder you. But if that doesn't happen, worst case scenario is you've increased. If you leave alive, you've increased your market knowledge, and that's all. I mean, that's all helpful. I remember going back to this. I remember my first open house. I was terrified. I didn't have a sign-in sheet because I didn't know I was supposed to bring that. I thought should I be offering to make people lunch? I had no idea what I was doing. The cooking and pie. No idea what I was doing. And it came off that way. And so I started focusing more on what can I do. Now the market was different. There was a lot more inventory. So I started spending more time previewing, going to different houses, things like going to different houses that are near my house for my open and increasing my market knowledge. And I remember the first open house I held where somebody asked me a question about the neighborhood and I talked to them and I realized by the time I finished talking to them that everybody that was at my open house was standing around listening to me. And that was the first time that it ever happened. And that was such a confidence boost. And I felt like now I'm doing the things I'm supposed to be doing. Now I'm working the way I want to be working. And it made a huge difference and it impacted everything. And again, so that became, I need to make that part of my routine. That's how I can be consistent. And that's what I did. And it led to a major increase in my business. So again, consistency, I can't stress enough. That is such an important way to do it. And then the other thing about, for me, at least with consistency, is that way if something isn't working or stops working. I love open houses. I love doing open houses. I like talking to people. I like meeting new people. I love hearing their stories. So I enjoy doing an open house where I get to meet a bunch of people. But if for some reason things slow down, the weather starts to get colder, anything like that, and you get fewer people at your open house, I'm not going to stop doing open houses because I know those work for me. But it'll give me the opportunity because I'm consistent and I'm doing the same things. It'll open the door for me to, am I ready to implement something new and try something different? And going back to open houses, this is one of the things I used to do. if there wasn't a good open house that I wanted to hold open, or in an area or a location that I wanted, I started focusing on making phone calls for those areas. I'd go back. We have our database of properties that we've had listed and have listed, and I'd reach out to people. And I thought to myself, I could spend 2 hours at an open house talking to people, or I could spend 2 hours on my phone calling people in the areas, looking in the areas I want. And so I started thinking, how is that any different than an open house? And it really didn't feel that different to me, which is where I got to my one philosophy that I get made fun of for saying sometimes. But really, when you look at it, everywhere you are, everything you do can be an open house. Every party you go to where somebody asks you what you do, that becomes an open house. Because if you know the market, if you're doing these steps, if you're being consistent and you're learning the market, then answering that question to a friend at a Super Bowl party is the same as answering it to a stranger at an open house. I go back to when I bought my car. I ended up striking up a conversation with a guy doing the financing while we were waiting for my credit check to come back. Did not go well. Good kidding. But we were waiting for the paperwork to go through. He started talking about, I just moved here and I'm staying, here, but my wife and I really need to find a place. I spent an hour buying a new car and I came out of it with a client and I sold him a house. And that was a great thing. Again, I always say, if you get one good buyer out of an open house, you've had a good open house. Well, I didn't even have an open house and I got one good buyer. So everywhere you go, anytime it comes up at all, I've done more business at Super Bowl parties than I have, like funerals, but that's to be expected. But I wouldn't stop me from doing it there either. So I'm looking at everybody. I'm working the room, Kathy. Working the room. So that's it. So everywhere you go, anything is an open house. Anywhere as a potential client, if you look at it that way. So that's been a game changer for me. Absolute game changer for me. So we'll move on to focusing on your clients. So this is a big one. So once I was able to work on my mindset, I started to think about how can I implement this for other people? And we'll talk about buyer fatigue. If anyone's heard of buyer fatigue, it's a real thing. And people, especially in a market like this, when your clients are getting beaten out, it can be very frustrating. So going back to one of the things I'll say a lot is that for me, at least, my philosophy is this business is less about buying houses and more about, or selling houses and more about maintaining relationships. Like I said about the mutual release. If you get a mutual release, it shouldn't mean your client goes away with the deal. So you've got to focus and make sure it doesn't. Buyer fatigue is very similar to me. And that is, if you've got a client who is frustrated with the market, it's your job to keep them energized. And you've got to really make the difference. If you're listening, if you're not stressed and focused on other stuff, you can really listen to your client. And so for instance, this weekend, I had a client, we looked at a house and he said, we really like this house. We'd love to make an offer. He said, but I can't do this another weekend where we make an offer on a Friday and we have to wait till Sunday while other offers are coming in. And I get it. And to me, so what I'm hearing is this guy is starting to feel buyer fatigue. And I need to make sure if this is going to be one of those situations, that the next contract is another one that I'm writing. So I need to keep him out of that. So it turned into I listened to what he said and I said, let's do this. Since we do know there's a deadline, let's hold off and I'll get as much information as I can and we'll write the contract when you're ready and you won't be stressing over it as much. And that's what we did. And I worked with it and worked with it and I worked with it. And we didn't get it. We got beaten out, which is common right now. But it kept him sane and it kept him in the game. And I got several thank yous from he and his wife afterward. And that's what it is. You've got to pivot to maintaining those relationships because, buyer fatigue, everything, it's a real thing. And again, mindset, like you can't focus on that if you lose a buyer, or if they want to wait until spring. We're going to wait till spring. Market's too crazy right now, things like that. Work with them. It doesn't mean you ignore that person. You have to, it changes the way you follow up maybe, and it changes the way you communicate with them. But in the grand scheme of things, all you do, worst case scenario, you're building your pipeline for next year. If I just had this, I had a past client decide they want to move again. And we went out, looked at some houses, and then they said, you know what? I think we're going to wait till spring. It's a little crazier than we thought it was going to be. Great. All that says to me is my 2024 is already looking better. And that's the way I go into it. That's what I look at. And it frees me up to work with people who are more ready now. and it frees me up to go preview some houses. It frees me up to get better every day. And what that shows me is, what else can I do? So again, going back to goals, when I focus on my goals, I'll say this: I've basically already hit my goals for this year, which I anticipated, my personal goals. But all that's showing me is now I've got the rest of the year to do more, and I want to. It keeps me energized. It shows me that I had set my original goals too low, maybe, but also that if I work consistently, I can put myself in a position to take more on because I'm not focused on the negative. That's one of the things I used to do all the time. Is like, if I had a buyer back out, or if I had a mutual release, I'd be so laser focused on that. And I would think, you might have 4 other clients that are ready to go right now, and you're forgetting about them because you're so focused on something bad. I've had this conversation with other agents a ton of times. You've got to remember the good, because there's always good somewhere, even if you have to manifest it your own way somehow. But it's out there. So again, focus on what's important. It's never about losing a deal. You can lose a deal, but don't lose a client. It doesn't mean you have to. So again, like I said, one of my biggest is maintaining the relationships. So maintaining relationships to me is that's what this is about. This is about, because it's not, even if you get a deal to close, that shouldn't be the end. It's not about our mission statement. We mention positive relationships for life. So you should never be thinking, this is as far as I'm going with this person. I mean, these people should be with you for always. And so it's never, and that's a huge positive. That's always going to be a positive. When we do our past client events, things like that, I love seeing people that I haven't seen in years. I know I've talked to them. I mean, I've seen them in a while, although I probably see more people than most. But that's one of those things. It's very, the maintaining of the relationships for me, at least. Okay. I also use this when I'm working with other agents. One of my big things is, and we talk about this a lot, but I want to use a positive mindset to build rapport with another agent. I want the listing agent to be excited. When I'm calling for the first time and asking for, we all have to ask the questions. How many offers do you have? You know, when are you going to look at them now? Are you going to wait for the weekend until Sunday? You know, all the stuff that we ask as agents to get information for our people, what's important to your clients, things like that. That's an opportunity to build a rapport with a listing agent. Make someone want to work with you. Show them what it's going to be like to work on a deal with you, and get them excited about it. Get them energized. Hey, I see myself as someone that has a pretty good sense of humor. So I like to crack a couple jokes here and there and get someone thinking this guy's going to be fun to work with. I mean, I'm not, but I want them to think that beforehand, before I really drop the hammer. But but you want people to be excited to work with you. You call them down, or what you call a listing agent and ask, how many offers do you have? Sounds like we're not going to get this one. Well, I wouldn't want to work with that person. That's a defeatist attitude already. I want other agents to be excited to work with me. And plus, you're doing that. Every one of those that you do, and you've had a good relationship or a good conversation with a listing agent, you're creating a network. You're getting yourself out there. You're getting your attitude out there, and you're making people realize this guy's someone I want to do a deal with. He's someone who's got a good attitude. He shows a lot of houses. This is someone we'd like to work with. And that's you're building your own network, and it's great to do. You'll get the next one with them. I mean, it comes in very handy when you're calling other agents, when you're trying to find clients, maybe something off market for a client, and you're talking to agents who work in the areas that you've been writing contracts in. You reach out to them. Hey, what else do you have coming on? I've done that with a lot of agents, where I'll be working on one deal, and because I've got a good relationship with the agent, she might say, hey, well, who else do you have in the area? Do you have anybody else in the area? I've got this coming up. You know, things like that. It's a great way to take advantage of what other people may have coming. And so you're making a name, like I said, so you're creating a network, and you're making a name for yourself. Make a name for yourself as somebody that somebody wants to work with. And so it's great. It goes a really, really long way. So I'm getting done a little bit faster than I thought we were going to. Yeah. So, but anyway, those are my biggest things. I will, I guess, a little bit earlier, open it up to Q&A. So, like, please.
What
do I need to say?
Was there some kind of epiphany, or what happened, or did you just gradually?
So yes, there was a great question, and I should have brought this up. Yeah, I was struggling. I was struggling a lot my first year doing sales, and my first couple years I struggled. I had some success pretty early on, and then, but I had some success early on, but it wasn't tracking. I wasn't maintaining it. And I was running around a lot, and I was running around and not seeing results. And so that was when I said, you know what, I've got to, and it was selfish of me, but I said, I've got to start focusing on me. I always tried to be a really good team player. So if someone said, hey, can you hold this open house for me? And it was an area or a price point that I didn't want to work. It was no gain to me. I'll tell you a great example. This is a positive and a negative. We had a great listing. It was a lake house, and it was far south, very far south, about an hour away from here. And it definitely needed a passport. It was further than South County. But it was, I showed it to, I had some friends who thought they might want a lake house. And so I showed it to them. Well, since I showed it and we didn't have a lot of agents that worked that area, then all the leads for that house came to me, which was fine. I loved it. And I got one of my favorite clients of all time out of it. But it wasn't how I wanted to be working. I loved that I was helping out, and I met some great people and I got some good clients. But it was when you've got a listing, when you show a house that's over an hour away, and then it's like setting boundaries. I told the world, I will drive over an hour away anytime you need me to. And again, this was a time when I was dropping everything to do showings. So I could have been, when you're saying yes to one thing, you're saying no to something else. And when I was saying yes to driving an hour and a half, 3 hours back and forth, almost every weekend, I was saying no to so many other clients. And so that was part of my epiphany. Was I hated to say no to a teammate and not help out, but I needed to. It wasn't the right thing for me to be doing. I had to focus on my goals. And so that was one of the things. And then so I did that. And you know what it was? I'll tell you how that kind of got the ball rolling, was because I did it. I said, I turned to someone and I said, hey, I'm going to work with the people I'm working with now, but I really don't want any more leads in this area. I can't, it's too difficult for me to get down there. It eats too much of my weekend going back and forth. And I'm not able to service my other clients. And the response was, okay. I fully expected it to be, hey, we really need you down there. You're really letting us down. No, the answer was okay. And I built this up in my mind, and I stressed about it. Am I being a horrible person by saying no to this? But again, that was my mindset at the time. That was my mindset. I have to be everything to everybody. And I didn't. And like I said, the answer was okay. One of our team leaders says a lot. He talks about when you're calling people, you're calling leads that you haven't talked to. Very rarely are they going to yell at you. It doesn't happen. But a lot of times when we're getting started, when I was getting started, that was my expectation. This is someone who doesn't want to talk to me. And I went into it like that. And then I started making incremental shifts in my mindset. It's okay. You know what? I'm okay to take care of myself. I'm still taking care of people. I'm doing it the way I want to do it. And, I started to find it was okay to say no to certain things, because I was saying yes to others. And it increased my business, and I was working the way I wanted to work. And so then that led into, different open houses. Hey, can you hold this open house for me? No, I'm going to do this one instead, or I'm not going to do one at all and make phone calls. It was just, I started consistently doing the activities that I wanted to do that I thought were going to help my business. And nobody on the team was getting mad that I wasn't showing these other houses if I was selling these other houses. It was a huge win for everybody. And so, especially, but for everyone. But that's what it was. So I started sleeping better, started feeling better, and it just made a huge difference. So, that was one of I'm trying to think of other struggles that I was having, or where I was able to do this kind of stuff. But that was it. It was.
Once you see this positive result from this
it snowballs.
Continue.
Well, like I said,
you're more willing to take maybe a risk. Did you find that you do that too?
No, I wouldn't consider. I don't consider any of it a risk.
No, I meant in a good way.
Yeah. No, I know what you mean. Because what it did for me was, if I'm not spending 3 hours in the car showing houses to a first meeting, a buyer consultation on this very buyer specific house, I can use that 3 hours to increase my market knowledge in other areas. And that's what I wouldn't say made me want to take risks, but that gave me the confidence to do more work, because I was able to take the time away from there and put it towards very positive activities. And so that was a big thing. Yes, Kathy.
With regards to self-care and maintaining a business so that it's providing for your needs and not going up and down and all that kind of stuff, how do you manage your self-care in order to be present and be more consistent?
Do I need to repeat that question or anything? All right. So Kathy was asking about like when I talk about self-care and how that helps me, like how does
it help towards consistency?
Towards consistency. Well, actually, it's the opposite. The consistency helps me with self-care.
Okay.
Once I started working a specific way and sticking with it, I set a boundary. At this time, I'm done answering my phone. At this time, so I knew when my day was going to start. I knew when my day was going to end. And so that helped. Keeping that consistent was just a better feeling. I wasn't laying in bed at 11 o'clock worrying about who did I not get back to, because it was, that kind of stuff. It was, things weren't keeping me up at night. And so that's it. So I would say we started to work consistently. I wasn't stressing about somebody else's goals. I mean, that was the biggest thing.
That was I want to say your first year, you did not serve.
Right.
And then like that creates negativity in your stuff, and not yourself, but in your mindset. So I think once you figure all that out, and that people should see your friends every
Yeah.
And that was hard.
Yeah. So Julie had mentioned in my first year that because I wasn't working consistently, I was working all the time, and I wasn't spending time with any of my friends or my family or anything. And it's true. And it was, and I thought that's what was needed. I thought that's what I needed to do. That's what the commitment I had to make. It wasn't. I probably set myself back further by doing that than I would have if I'd started working consistently and set boundaries. Setting boundaries setting boundaries was the best thing I could have done for self-care, because it was okay. I know I can be okay with this. And that was the kind of stuff, was like, it helped me get stuff off my plate, all that kind of stuff. I used to have a big problem with procrastination. I still struggle with it, but it's a lot easier because to be consistent and be able to knock stuff off, to be able to get things done, little things that don't weigh on you. One of the things, and I don't remember who the general was that said this, but we talk about it a lot. One of the best things I did was I started making my bed every morning. And it's one of the best things you can do. It says make your bed. It's accomplishing a small task first thing in the morning, getting it done. And for me, at least, it was then I know I'm not going to get back in it. And so, but it was like that kind of stuff. I'm not going to go back to bed. My bed's made. I'm done. I'll see you tonight, bed. Possibly during the day for 20 minutes. We'll see.
You're talking about boundaries, and I know Mark mentioned this morning, and Sarah, when he was saying today about, okay, if the phone rings at midnight, if you want to answer it. So I don't want to be sending mixed messages. But do you want to just get right?
Well, I'll do. Yeah, I know, because we talked about this. We talked about this a bunch. Yeah, the gray. There's a lot of gray area.
There was this, because he just mentioned it this morning
in
the meeting, and so I don't. Right. Yeah. I'll let one of you guys can field it, but he just said, maybe working, and he also said that boundaries. So just kind of, I don't want to. I know there's a lot of people here just.
Yeah. Okay. So one of the things, and we talk about this a lot. It's especially when you're getting started. We teach things very black and white, and there's a lot of gray area in this business. And one of the things, my biggest one, because this drove me crazy. We were at a team meeting, because I knew what everyone was trying to say, but I also knew what they weren't trying to say. And it was, we talked about if you want to have it's always good to have a buyer consult with a buyer, so you can get questions answered, find out how viable they are, things like that. But we had a big run of everyone booking these buyer consults and people not showing up for them. And which is, especially when you're just starting out, that can crush you. That's a very easy negative to focus on. But the way I look, and we were saying, like, the idea of, if someone calls you and wants to see a house, don't just jump up and do it, because you don't even know if they're a viable buyer. Well, to me, if someone says to me, hey, will you show me a house? And I say, well, sure, but can you come into my office first and we can have a buyer consult? And then they say, well, no, can't you just show me the house? And I don't have anything else scheduled for that day. Yeah, I'm going to show you the house, and I'll talk to you there and get some questions answered and build a rapport. But it's like, it's one of those things, if you're swamped, if you're super busy and someone can't meet up with you or something like that, then sure, maybe put them on the back burner or something like that. But if you've got nothing else going on, there's no reason not to. I said, if I told our team leader, hey, I was gonna show this guy this $1 million house, but he didn't want to meet first and tell me about where he's coming from, where he moved here from, or where he grew up. So I'm like, I don't think I want to work with this guy. I'm like, no, that would not go over well. I'd be back to worrying. I'd be back to staying up late at night.
What is it now? Lessons to do?
It is. It's. You've got to do what works for you. If you're working with a client and they've got an emergency and you know it and it's 10 o'clock, answer the phone. If it's someone saying, hey, this house went under contract and I thought maybe I wanted to see it. Do you think they would still let us see it? And I get that at 11 o'clock, I'll respond in the morning.
No, but this is where the voice memos here. Like if I'm slow, I probably but if
Yeah.
Just kind of what we're saying. We're not sending you guys, we're not giving you guys two different messages.
There's some gray area.
First year was bad.
Yeah.
Year, the first year, everyone can relate to that. Until you've done all the things and you can find what you do best, I would take too long.
Right.
Yeah. Well, and a lot of it also, Sarah, is doing when you.
You wouldn't have answered all those voices. You felt scattered and chaotic because you didn't have consistency
Right.
yet, but that led you to, I know this is what I'm good at. I'm going to double down. on
Right.
these, and you could clear the noise and really focus.
Exactly.
That's huge.
So yes, I did a lot of open houses and I answered a lot of calls and I took on more than I should have, but it still gave me the opportunity to see what do I like though? What does work for me? Open houses I love. So instead of doing all the open houses, I switched to doing the open houses I wanted to that worked for me. Instead of answering all the phone calls, it switched to answer the phone calls that work for me and things like that. And that's what I needed to learn. Neil, go ahead.
Yeah, so Gary Keller wrote a book through Power Keller Williams. It basically talks about pick the one best thing that works for you. And at the end of the day, like when I started, I did the same thing. All I did was focus on open houses. And open houses for me work really well. There's other people on that team who started out as ASAs and that worked best for them. But at the end of the day, it's that suggestion. I've been doing this for 20 years. Is that you have to, you can't make everybody happy. You can't do everything for everybody. And at the end of the day, you get to the point where you have to learn to control your schedule and don't let your clients control you. Because, and one of the things that I used to do most consistently, when I still do, is if I don't want to talk to somebody, there are certain clients of ours that they should talk to, it's going to be a 5-minute conversation. And then you can pick up the phone, there's one quick question you're done. Others, there are time vampires with the on the phone 24 minutes. I just text them and say I'm currently in a meeting, about to dinner, I'm in a meeting, or whatever I'm doing, and I'll call you in the morning. Or text me. And by the way, 99% of the time, they text back, oh, no big deal, I'll talk to you in the morning. And for people who are newer in the business, as Scott suggested early on, which is great, is until you become confident and until you become consistent, if somebody doesn't return a call, it doesn't mean they're never going to return your call. If somebody, keep calling, and most people, if you had a good first conversation with them, most people, we're all busy. Think of all the people in here. Sarah's the best example. Balancing her life with kids, etc. If you had a really good conversation and you were planning on potentially meeting, just because she didn't return your call doesn't mean she doesn't want to talk to you. And I learned that early on in sales over the years. I always worried about, oh man, I'm not going to get that sale because they didn't call me back. They eventually will call you back if you have the rapport and you have a consistency of that follow-on with the people that respect you.
That's excellent. Thank you, Neil. One of my big things, like again, with my consistency also went to my message. And I think that's kind of somewhat what Neil's saying. Like it was when I first started in my phone, my calls were, hi, this is Scott from the Gelman team. And you reached out about whatever and things like that. And then I don't hear back. They don't text back. And then I call them again the next day or the next week or whenever. And it's the same thing. I could almost feel myself getting more and more desperate with it. And I'm sure it came across that way on the phone. And so it kind of was like when I changed the mindset of let's just be consistent, my message became more consistent. And it was just the same, it was the way I treated my follow-up before was I always treated my follow-up. I wasn't a phone call guy before I started doing this job. And I felt like people didn't want to talk to me, and I had to get that out of my head. I had to get it out of my head that people don't want to talk to me. You've got to remember, most of the leads we deal with are at least somewhat warm, or you're not cold calling people. Someone has asked for your help at some point or about something. So you should be giving them something they want. And then, but I used to look at my follow-up and my prospecting as something to get through, as opposed to something that was going to help me. I'd look at how my reminders were set up, and I'd think, I'll try to get through as many of these as I can. And it made it miserable. And when I changed the way I looked at my follow-up, that really made a big difference. I started using our CRM. I started using Sierra as a tool as opposed to a chore. And when I used it as a tool, sending out listings through it, sending out text messages through it, things like that, I got a better response, and B, it made me feel better about it. And it went from originally when I would time block, I'll do an hour of prospecting right now, and I would get almost nothing done because I was dreading the calls. And then once I started using it differently and getting more excited about it and I would see better results, I might time block for an hour to do 15, 20, 30 calls, and it would probably take me half an hour. It was taking less time because I was better at it, and I felt better about it. I wasn't looking for reasons not to make the next call.
To add to what you're saying, you start off with a whole message.
Mm-hmm.
So one of the most important things is if you're having a bad day, don't do your prospecting lead messages like that. It'll come across. I drive my family crazy because I work out of my house most of the time. And I have a headset, Bluetooth, and I literally walk around the entire house. Even if they're in the rooms, I'm still walking past them. They hear every conversation. But at the end of the day, I always stand up. I'm always upbeat. Anytime I leave a message, regardless if they haven't returned my call for 10 times, I still leave the same positive, upbeat message.
Mm-hmm.
So that they always think of you as an upbeat person who's there to help them.
Right. Oh.
So they're asking, what do you say now when you leave a message?
Okay. Well, this is going to be a very roundabout way to answer that question. What do I say now when I leave messages? Yeah. And I'll answer it like this, because this was a big thing for me. Like I said, I was never a phone person, and so my messages reflected that, things like that. And I took everything personally. So when I would call somebody and they didn't answer or didn't text me back, I would shut down or be like, "Oh, I'm bothering this person." I always felt like I was bothering them. Now, when I started thinking differently about it, I love the people that don't answer the phone. Those are my favorite people in the world. And the reason being is because, and I call them my runway calls. I used to say this when I would practice role play, scripts and dialogues. I always called it my runway. When you get comfortable with, hey, this is Scott from the Gelman team. You reached out about this property. What questions can I answer? I would be very comfortable with that part of the question asking, and I would keep going. Neil actually had us doing this. He had to start over every time, and it was so you could practice. And so the beginning of my scripts and dialogues was great because I'd done it so many times. It was the parts that I didn't always get to that were weaker, and so I always equated it to building a runway. I'm this comfortable right now. I need to be this comfortable. So let's keep working at it. So what I call now the people that don't answer the phone or don't answer when I call, I hold on to those leads forever because I love first thing in the morning calling someone who I don't think is going to answer so I can practice. I can get ready and warm up my messages that I leave. And it's, generally something like, hey, this is Scott from the Gelman team. You had previously reached out about homes in Chesterfield. I wanted to get some information sent your way. You can reach me at this number, and I'll send a text kind of similar. When would be a good time to talk, or in an email, and I'll do all that. But it was those runway calls. I wake up most mornings thinking, I hope these people don't answer because I want to get some practice in before I'm ready to talk to someone who I know is going to answer. And worst case scenario, they answer. Worst case scenario, and you get an answer. I mean, the thing is, and I stopped, one of the biggest things, I stopped worrying about bothering these people because I look at it this way. Every phone call, every text, you're giving someone an opportunity to tell you to stop. And if they don't, then maybe they will need you down the road and they're just waiting for that time when they need you. I can't tell you how many times people I'd gotten down about early on when they picked up, and this is probably what helps shift my mindset on a lot of that stuff, was I'd finally, like, they'd answer like, oh, hey, sorry I haven't gotten back to you. We weren't ready to start looking till now. And things like that. And it's like, yeah, no problem. It's okay. It's only been 3 years. But like that kind of stuff, like that kind of stuff. Like it's they don't need you till they need you. And that was such an important lesson for me to learn.
One of the reasons you're successful, though, just seeing you, we can all watch you, is your smile and your energy comes across on the phone.
So, okay.
That's super important.
Thank you. All right. So Neil had said that my smile and my energy comes through on the phone. And I think he's right. But so in the early years when I wasn't smiley, it was the opposite was coming through. Yeah. But I'll tell you what made a big difference for me on that was really finding my voice. And that was open houses. For me, open houses really, I'm weird and I ask a lot of weird questions, and it's easier to do in an open house for me than on the phone. Because people can read me better. They can read my body language when I do it. I always go back to, I don't want to just say I'm weird. I'll give an example. Although most of you have probably heard it. One of my first open houses, and I tell this story at almost all of my open houses now, and I feel like it's a good icebreaker. They didn't want shoes on. So I took my shoes. I should have put on booties, but I took my shoes off. Well, I don't know how they waxed this kitchen floor, but it was like I'm standing talking to a guy in the kitchen and I can feel myself going into the splits. And all I can think to myself is get through this immediately or you're going to fall into this guy. And I did not get through it immediately. And I did fall into the guy. I mean, he ends up hoisting me up like Patrick Swayze in Dirty Dancing. And I'm like literally standing, I'm just like, this guy's probably not going to buy a house from me. And he didn't, but it was a great story. And I've told that story at almost every open house and I get a great reaction. And it's like, but that is my strength is my personality. And I wasn't using it for the first 2 years I was doing the shop because I was letting the market dictate my personality. And that was a huge, and then when I started playing in my strengths, that made a big difference. And it kept me positive. Yeah, I mean, I think most agents generally, for the most part, except, a handful of listing agents I've worked with, have good personalities for the most part. But yeah, that's more, again, like I said this earlier, I love to meet new people and I love to hear their stories. And so I think people know that about me. And so, I mean, that's one of the reasons why I show 500 houses to everybody.
Can you explain
Dirty
to
Dancing?
people who don't know how your personality leads to the kind of relationships you have with your clients after the season? Because it's very unique.
Yeah, I do. I have a lot of unique relationships with past clients, and it's because it's the same stuff that made me struggle at the beginning is now that, and it is I care a lot. And so it's one of those things, and that's one of the things I want to get through to my people. Again, to me, it's not about buying and selling houses. It's about maintaining the relationship. And so my people say, they know that I care. I'll tell a story and I'll try not to get emotional. It's tough for me not to when I tell this story. I had clients and they were past client referrals. It was a family member of someone I'd worked with. And we were looking in one school district and then we were having trouble finding something. So we opened it up to a second school district. And the mom said, we were walking out of the house and I was asking the daughter, how do you like the house? Because I knew the daughter didn't, this was in a school district that she was iffy on. And I asked the daughter, I'm like, what did you think? And she said, oh, I liked it. I said, is this okay? I mean, it would be this school district. Are you okay with that? And the mom, and she was like on her phone or whatever. And the mom said, hey, listen to Scott. He's asking you questions. She's like, he wants to know. And she was like, well, why is he just asking me? And the mom said, because he cares about you. And that was like, and I almost lost. I'm going to lose right now, but I almost lost it right there because I did. I mean, I used to, that's the kind of stuff that would keep me up at night is their daughter's going to be miserable there. She doesn't want to switch schools, but like their daughter reassured me she was happy switching schools because she had friends there. And it's, I mean, I'm no stranger to figuring out what your kids might know at this new school, that I might know a kid in this school district and maybe set you up so you've got someone to talk to. But I care about that kind of stuff. I really do. And because I'd want someone to worry about my family like that. And so that's a big thing. So yes, that gets me invited to a lot of dinners And yes, I've stood up in clients' weddings and things like that. And so, but yeah, but I love it. I mean, I'm flattered by it. And you know, to me, every happy hour, every Thanksgiving, every wedding, every housewarming, that's a win. That's a huge win for me. And like I said, our mission statement says positive relationships for life. I take that seriously. So yeah. Yeah.
Any other questions? I'm just gonna say just real quick, going back to the people not showing up for your,
Not showing up for
yeah, and you had talked about somebody that stood you up a time or two, and like years down the road, now, you know, you.
Yes. So I had a client, there was a lead that was assigned to me maybe 2 years ago, that could barely get a response, stood me up numerous times. And then recently came back out of the woodwork and was like, and I was actually here at the office and I was talking to Sarah and I said, do I even show up for this? I said, they stand me up all the time. And I said, you know what? I'm going to go, but this is it. Last time they stand me up again, I'm done. And Sarah made the point. It was a good point. Sarah said, well, they're looking at houses. I mean, they're looking for houses and they're asking, so they must be somewhat interested. And I said, fine, but they've done this before and they haven't shown. It's been so many times. And so I showed up and I called Sarah because I was there for 15 minutes and they hadn't shown up yet. And that's when Sarah said, okay, you can let this one go now. And I said, wait a minute, I think they may be pulling up. I'll call you back. So they pulled up. We ended up looking. So they pulled up. We ended up looking at a few houses. That didn't write anything that weekend. We worked together. They got way more involved for about a month. I went to their housewarming on Sunday. I was invited to a ceremony at their house on Sunday. And so that falls squarely under they don't need you until they need you. And that's why, and then again, if I'd taken it personally, I wouldn't have. Yes, it was definitely one of my runway calls. Definitely one of my runway calls for probably a year or two. But yeah, and so yeah, they don't need you till they need you. And that's why if that 100% an example of somebody in my first year that I would have given up on. But it's like, it's again, at the end of the day, when people say, well, how, God, you've kept this person for 4 years. Why? Because sending one email a month or calling or leaving a 30-second message, it's not take a lot out of my day. And it really doesn't. And if they do need me, and I put a lot of time into this, so if they're going to buy a house, they're going to buy it with me.
One more quick question. You mentioned like clients, or it sounds like in your experience, you've had several you kind of follow up with a bunch before they were actually ready to buy. When you're staying in touch with them and following up, what's that frequency and what's that messaging like? Because hey, just checking in kind of.
Yeah, I hate that. I hate the hey, you want to get out this weekend, stuff like that. I will try to find different things to talk about. I mean, luckily we do a lot of client appreciation stuff. So I mean, I don't care. I don't care if I've never met you in my life. You're getting a pie. But that's the kind of stuff. One of the things I do, and we talked about this morning, if it's someone, it depends on if I've ever talked to them or if I've ever showed them a house, then I try to be more personal. If it's someone I've never met with, it's just someone, it's like a runway call. Again, I could do 10 runway calls a week on the same client. I love it because it's easy.
Say though, like, are you just saying the same thing?
Yeah, basically say the same thing. What I'm really saying is, I dare you to tell me to stop.
Yeah.
I dare you to tell me to stop reaching out to you because that's it. I'm giving you an opportunity. You asked for our help at one point. If you don't need it today, that's fine. I'm letting you know. I'm letting you know when you do need it. I'm still here.
Yeah.
3 years. I have my first client, and the first lead I ever got. I still have. I don't know that they'll ever buy a house, but I will check in and just ask them how their kids are doing. How the twins. And it's like that, and I'll get like, thank you so much for sticking with us. I don't know when we're going to buy, but thanks so much for sticking with us. And that's fine because it barely takes any time out of my day. And it really does. It's so easy. I had a boss in college. He used to say, at most, it's going to take you maybe an extra 30 seconds to a minute to do something the right way. And as opposed to, half-assing something. And so, and I that stuck with me. And it's just like, could I give this person up? Yeah. But is it really hurting? And the amount of time that I'm thinking about getting rid of them, I could have already sent the email.
But you also, I think you do a good job of looking for things to at least say, like you said, your Chesterfield home search or your ranch, I know you're looking for ranch, you'll use at least some nugget that you know.
I will send, I like to, even if I don't think the house will work, I like to send a listing with any message. Hey, was thinking about you, and I know you're looking for a ranch in this area. I don't know if this checks all the boxes, but this is what we're seeing on the market right now, kind of stuff, something like that, just to get out there. What I do sometimes, like for a runway call, I was saying this morning, I'll send something that's not even close, and like something like, you wanted a ranch in Chesterfield? Here's a 2-story in Sunset Hills. Hey, does this meet your needs? That's not where we're looking. Oh, well, as long as I got you. I mean, it's like, I'm daring you not to respond to me. But like, that's it. But these are the kind of things, I never would have done these things 2 years ago because I would have been nervous about it. I was afraid I was going to get yelled at. And I did get yelled at a few times. But I got to the point where I liked that too. Even if you're getting yelled at, you're getting an answer to a question. I mean, everything that happens, everything you do, every non-response you get isn't, they don't like me. It's, they're not ready. If they, I mean, you're giving everybody every opportunity to tell you to stop. And if they don't, then they're probably going to need you someday. Huh? You want me to?
Yeah.
All right. Well, thanks everyone for being here.